Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, and hello if you are new here. Thank you for joining. So I'm going to wrap up the 15 books that I read in February and March. I'm going to kind of call this my Q1 wrap up. I've seen people doing it on BookTok. I kind of love the idea of it because we are essentially already through the first quarter of the year, which is just insane to me that we're already in April. What the hell? The reason this doesn't involve January is because I actually read Throne of Glass in January. Well, I read the last 4 books in January, and I have already done a review specifically just for Throne of Glass, so I will link that down below if you want to see my review on it. However, yes, I did read 15 books then between February and March, which isn't actually a lot of reading for me. However, I've read a good selection. I've had a 5-star read, I've had some really disappointing reads, so let's wrap up the books. I'm going to start with the books I read in February first. Okay, so I read Radiant Sin by Katie Robert, which is the 4th book in the Dark Olympus series, which I absolutely love. The Dark Olympus series, a lot of people love it or hate it. It is kind of like fantasy, but it's not. It's really weird. It's kind of giving, in Hunger Games where you have the capital, we've got the elite rich people. That is essentially Olympus. They are offset from the rest of the world, and you basically have the 13. It's very political, and the 13 are all members, because they're Greek retellings, right? So the 13 is Zeus, Hera, Poseidon, Aphrodite, all of those members of 13, and then we've also got some of their kids in it. So you'll have Orpheus, Eurydice, Persephone, all of them are in this, and it follows their story. So each book will focus on a couple, or maybe more than a couple, and I just love them. I think they're really dark, spicy, sexy, sensual. They're really fun. This is the retelling of Apollo and Cassandra, and I really enjoyed this one. I gave it 4 stars. It kind of gives this murder mystery vibes. They all go to this house, this sort of old money vibe house, and people are going missing or getting unalived there, and it's basically trying to find out who's doing this. It's very heavy on the politics. This is an age gap kind of workplace romance, and I really enjoyed it. I really recommend it. It was a solid 4-star read for me. These books are just fun. They're just so much fun, and I highly recommend this series. And also, you don't need to read them one after the other, because they are interconnected. I would recommend reading them in order. Read one as a palate cleanser or just something fun, and then go on to the next one. But yeah, I really enjoyed this story. I read A Long Shot by Kennedy Ryan, and this was such a disappointment for me. I gave it 3 stars. I know this book is very well loved, and Kennedy Ryan as an author is very well loved, but this book just didn't hit it for me. I had more issues with it than what I enjoyed. I thought the writing was good, and I think that the story that was told in it was important, and I liked the way that she handled it. However, this was far too much insta-lust for me. I don't know why people don't talk about this more, because I have never heard anyone describing this book as insta-lust until I read it, and I was like, are you actually being serious right now? It basically follows August and I can't even remember her name because I'm just so not unbothered by the book. August and Iris, I think it was. Yeah, August and Iris. And they meet in a bar one night, and they have this undeniable connection. They spend a couple of hours together, talking all the time. Turns out they run in the same circles. She's actually dating his basketball rival because he is going to be a professional basketball player. And this book spans, I want to say 18 months to 2 years maybe, or maybe even longer than that. Now, honestly, the insta-lust and the insta-obsession is crazy. They spend this one night together, and then he cannot get her out of his mind. He's ready. This is some mild spoilers, by the way. Just in case you haven't read it, I would maybe skip 30 seconds. He is ready to literally raise the child of his rival over a girl that he literally just met in a bar for literally a couple of hours. They only have 4 or 5 interactions spanning literal years, and all they can do is think about each other. All they're doing is picturing a future together. And I found it so unrealistic. I wasn't able to buy into their relationship because of it. I thought it was just ridiculous. There was some really weird scenes in it, like the breastfeeding scene. If you've read the book, you'll know exactly what I mean, that I just couldn't get on board with. And all of a sudden, I feel like there was a lot of backwards and forwards between them that was really unnecessary. And then in the last 10%, suddenly, everything just happens and they're together and it's just done. And I just thought it was really, there was no slow development of the relationship. Obviously, I understand the circumstances of the situation does make things in this different, but it still was just 3 stars for me. Then I read the Sinners Anonymous series by Some Sketchy, which I honestly feel like since I read this series, I have not stopped talking about it. I gave 2 of the books 4.5 stars, and then the very last book, which is the 3rd book, I gave 4 stars. I absolutely love them. So the first book, which is Sinners Anonymous, this follows Rory and Angelo, and then the second 2 books follow Rafe and Penny. And oh my god, I didn't think I liked mafia romance until I read this series. I was literally obsessed the whole entire time. Rafe and Penny's stories is very much like an enemies to lovers. There's a lot of banter between the two characters, a lot of backwards and forwards between them. It's definitely a slow burn for sure. Like the first book, they don't even touch each other. Like you are literally frothing at the mouth for something to happen and it just doesn't. It's definitely a slow burn. It's very spicy. I love the setting of it. Like it's all about casinos, luck, fate, all things like that. It's set in this like really gloomy coastal rainy town. There's like 3 towns along this coast: Devil's Dip, Devil's Hollow, and I can't remember the name of the last one. And there's 2 rival mafia families. They're like cousins and they all run all of it. They run the nightlife across the towns, like the imports and exports and everything. I really love the setting of it. It was very like dark, ominous, very like sexual. Like I can't explain it. I had so much fun. Then Rory and Angelo's story was very much like an enemies to lovers. I wouldn't say that that one was a slow burn, but it was definitely like tense, forbidden love, sort of like rival family like situation. And yeah, I just was obsessed with this. I highly recommend it. They're not very long to read either. They're like between 310 to 350 pages, so I flew through these. I couldn't put them down. I know that there are more books to come. Even the side characters I was invested in. I need Gabe's books as of yesterday. From book 1, I was intrigued by his character all the way through. I'm just obsessed. It's written so much better than I thought. For some reason I was like, these are just going to be really cheesy and a bit cliche. Not the case whatsoever. So if you've been putting this off for any reason, this is your sign to go and read them right now. I read Where's Molly by H.D. Carlton. This is the book that if you've read Hunting Adeline, which is the second book in the Cat and Mouse duet, when Addie is in the house, she finds these journals under the floorboard and the girl is called Molly. This is Molly's story. It is kind of a novella. It's like a longer novella, not really a full-length story, but it's only like 200 and something pages. And I didn't really know what to expect going into it. For some reason, I thought this was going to very much focus on the house that we know from Haunting Adeline already. Not the case whatsoever. Molly genuinely gets her own story. The house is just a tiny little sprinkle of it. She gets her own story. It follows her and Cage. We get flashbacks between past and present, and it's to do with Molly's upbringing and her sister, who is kind of like her driver in life and sort of what motivates her, and then how she meets Cage and what she does on the sidelines and how she works for this corporation. It's all linked to like Zaid and Z and all that stuff. Characters cameo in this left, right and centre, which I love. The spice was incredible. I will say Cage was kind of like a Zaid Meadows 2.0, just never really quite hit the bar that Zaid does. So they did feel a little bit copy and paste, but to be honest, like they're written by the same author, and if she writes a type of man, then they're gonna kind of be somewhat similar, I suppose. But I really enjoyed it. I thought it was very fast paced. I like the flashbacks between past and present. The only thing that I will say, I gave it 4 stars. It definitely could have been rated higher than that, but the only thing I will say is I did feel like her relationship with Cade, it's like a second chance one night stand situation, and I kind of feel like it was just rushed. I feel like it was very heavily relying on the fact that we just are told that they met once before and that's why they just end up together, and I just kind of wasn't really buying that. I wanted to see a little bit more development between the 2 characters, but aside from that, it's really fun, it's dark, it's spicy, and it just hits the spot. I'm telling you right now, if you are missing the Haunting Adeline world, you need to read Where's Molly. So I read the Born Darkly duet by Trisha Wolfe, which if you're not familiar with Trisha Wolfe, she writes very like psychological based books, which are thriller kind of esque. They sit very heavily around like criminology, psychology, getting into the minds of serial killers, sociopaths, that good stuff. And I love her books because they feel very intelligent. She writes incredibly well. They're very intelligent. I feel like I'm learning whilst I'm reading. I've said this 100 times with her books. I really enjoy them. These are 2, I wouldn't really call them novellas, but 2 short books that make a duet. And basically these books follow Grayson and London. So London is a sort of like criminologist lawyer situation where she gets people off of death row basically by essentially pleading that they're criminally insane and getting them a lesser sentence. She's really good at her job, and Grayson has been watching her from his cell for a long time, and he wants to cross paths with her for reasons that I'm not going to go into because you need to delve into the book. And it's really good. It's very spicy. It's very dark. It feels like you're reading a Criminal Minds episode. If anybody knows and loves Criminal Minds, you will love this duet. Like, honestly, it was so good. I think I gave the first book 4.5 stars and the second book 4 stars. Incredible. Very fast paced. You do need to suspend your beliefs somewhat because kind of end up in a situation where they're working together and they're on the run. That's all I'm going to say. And the way it gets there is just insane. We sort of really delve into London's past, things about who her father is, the way the mind works, the way the criminal mind works, the way like the psychopaths work, and the way they think, the way they feel, the way they view life. It's just incredible. You do, like I said, have to suspend your beliefs somewhat. It gets a little bit crazy. The first book was definitely a lot more fast paced than the second book, but I had so much fun with this. If you haven't even read, you must have heard of like Lovely Bad Things by Trisha Wolfe. That series as well, I've read the first book, so good. I think she's an amazing author that people need to talk about more, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this duet. I had so much fun with it. Okay, now we're getting into some books that I read in March. So I'm gonna split it up a bit, talk about some books that disappointed me. So I read The Psycho by Nikki J. Summers. This is meant to be a stalker romance. Now, I loved the first maybe like 5-6 chapters of this book. Basically, this follows like a group of vigilantes. They've got everybody in their pockets, the authorities, the police, like everyone. They kind of run this town. Love the setting of the town. It was kind of giving like New York vibes, but you know, like Brooklyn and things like that. It was giving me that kind of vibe. You know, like, has anyone watched Daredevil when that was on Netflix years ago? If you have, comment below. It's kind of giving me like that vibe. Really liked it, and I love stalker romance. Got around to this book and it just became the biggest disappointment ever. It had all the makings to be so good, and it's like the author didn't want to spend the time exploring the world that she was starting to build, or the characters, or developing their relationship. This is going to sound really weird. I like stalker romance when the FMC doesn't necessarily know she's being stalked, because there's a lot of tension around it, right? Like, we know she's being watched, she doesn't know she's being watched. Get on board with instant obsession and instant lust in a stalker romance, because otherwise, well, we wouldn't have a stalker romance, right? In this book, she knows she's being stalked and she like plays into it and taunts them with it, which for some reason for me just literally dissolved all of the tension that we could have built from a stalker romance. So that was the first thing that I didn't like about it. And then secondly, I just kind of felt like there was just all this backwards and forwards between them, and then all of a sudden just this switch is just flicked and she's like, do you know what, yeah, I really want to be with you, I really like you. She has got some of her own trauma and some of her own issues, which I felt like were very surface level and just kind of like thrown in for the sake of it. I feel like the author wrote down a load of tropes and just included them but didn't expand on anything. Like, that's how this book felt to read. It could have been so good. I love the idea of following this group of 5 guys. Like I say, they're all vigilantes that each go on to get their own book. This one is following the psycho, but he's not really very psycho. Also, I think I had a problem with, so I gave this like 2.5 stars. It was just, it wasn't good. Next up, Bully by Penelope Douglas was the biggest letdown ever. I gave this like 2 stars. I really struggled to finish it. I really wanted to DNF it, to be completely honest, but Penelope Douglas is one of my favourite authors, so I wanted to see it out to the end. I felt like I was reading the same day on repeat in this book. She goes to school, she gets bullied by Jared, and then she gets annoyed at him. He throws a party, she calls the police, they get annoyed at each other, repeat the next day. I honestly felt like I was reading the same day over and over and over again. I think the bullying is very, I wouldn't really call it bullying. I would just call it like a mild dislike, where where Jared is just kind of difficult for Tate to deal with, as opposed to like being a full-on bully. It's not really an enemies to lovers. And then I just feel like there was no groveling at the end of the book when they got together for what he did to her, because he did make her life difficult for a couple of years. I felt like we were just sort of like info dumped reasons why Jared was behaving the way he was right in the last 10% of the book, and then they just make up and get on with it. And then we suddenly start to introduce like this maybe third act breakup, which doesn't really quite get that far. And I just felt like the end of the book was just wildly fast paced, and then the first 80% of the book was really slow and really boring. I think the best way to describe it is that I was bored whilst reading this book, and I felt no real connection to the characters. I know a lot of people say this series gets gets better as it goes on. I'm not going to continue it because I'm just not going to continue it. I'm sorry, because like, I love you, Penelope, but this just was not it. I read Bride by Ellie Hazelwood. I gave this 4 stars. This was so fun. I love the whole werewolf vampire societies, and we've got humans and they all have their own territories, and basically what happens in this is, because they don't get along, what they were doing for years and years, it's very political, is they would send like, so say the vampires would send like a vampire child into werewolf well, they call them weres, into were territory, and then a were would send one into vampire territory, so that if they ended up in war or attacking each other, then they would unalive the child. And so that would be like the collateral damage to keep peace between the territories. And basically Misery ends up in an arranged marriage situation with Lo to try and keep the peace between the vampires and the werewolves and the humans. And there's twists and turns and everything in it. The spice is incredible. It's very light and megaverse, and I just had so much fun. I felt like the first couple of chapters in the book was a bit of an info dump about all of the history and everything. It felt like we were just kind of given all the information. And then I also kind of feel like the book itself is kind of slow. This definitely could have been a 5-star read if it was a bit quicker. However, that being said, I did really, really enjoy it. I had a lot of fun with it, and the spice was so good. It's definitely a slow burn, and it is quite political, but it was really fun. Praised by Sarah Kate was such a 5-star read for me. Oh my God, I literally had the best time. It basically follows Emerson and Charlie. It's an ex-boyfriend's dad, taboo, forbidden romance relationship. The name is pretty self-explanatory as to what this book is about. I devoured every second of this. We got character development throughout it. It was fast-paced. The spice, this is some of the best spice I've read without it being cliche or cringy, considering there was quite a lot of it in there. The balance of plot to spice was incredible. I was rooting for the characters by the end. Tension was just slowly sizzling and building and bubbling throughout the whole book. I just had the best time with this book, and I cannot wait to go and read the rest of it. Like, I'm actually buzzing. And also, like, Emerson, I don't know what it is about the older men in these books. It's an age gap romance. There's literally like 20-year age gap. I don't know what it is about these older men. I kind of felt the same about Pike Lawson in Birthday Girl, where they're older, they're more mature, they're so chilled and everything about it all, and they've just got it all under control. And then the FMC, like, she's younger, she's freaking out, she's got these feelings, she's in this situation she thought she'd never thought she'd be in, and the way that the men handle it, it's just, I love it. I read A Brutal Prince by Sophie Lark. This is an arranged marriage mafia romance, and it's kind of like rival families. I wouldn't call it enemies to lovers. I'd say it's more like a dislike to love. And this follows Ada and Callum. Ada Gallo is now one of my favourite FMCs. She is so feisty and fiery. She takes absolutely no shit, and I love that in my FMCs. I hate it when they constantly need saving. That was not the case in this. It was very fast-paced. It was a very fun, a light and easy read. I wouldn't say the story is that intricate. There's not that much that goes on really in it. It got really, really fast paced towards the end, but I just find that with Sophie Lark's writing, she honestly, anything she writes, I just have fun with it. It's just a quick, easy read. I do want to read the rest of the series, but after reading this first one, I've decided I would quite like to keep them for like palette cleansers in between other books, because they're short, quick and easy. Yeah, I absolutely loved this. I thought the pacing of the book was great. Like, it sets up a really fun and interesting world. I can't wait to see where it goes with all the other characters, like Ada's brothers and then like Callum's siblings and everything, because I'm sure it's all going to be connected between them all. I just had so much fun, and I keep thinking about Ada in this. And also I found it actually quite funny. Genuinely, I was having a bit of a laugh and a giggle with this book as well, which is just a bonus. Last book I've got for you guys is Master and Salt of Bones. This is by Kerry Lake. This was one of my most anticipated reads. I've been trying to read this for the best part of a year, and I absolutely loved this book. I gave it 4 stars just purely because I think it lost its way towards the end. The first half of it is definitely better than how it ended. This is very dark, mysterious. It's like a gothic dark romance. It's even got secret societies in it, and honestly, the society in it, pretty messed up. You're gonna love reading about it. It's quite an intricate story. It doesn't get boring by any means. I just felt like the first 50% of the book was a lot better than the last half. It's a bit of a slow burn. The spice is okay. I do feel like, again, we just get to a point where the couple just end up together. But that being said, I love the setting of this so much. It's very ominous. It's very mysterious. You are kept on the edge of your seat, like, especially in the first like 50%. Like, the prologue was insane. Like, I literally read the prologue and I was like, I need to read the rest of this book right now. Like, you just want to sit down and delve into it. This follows Lucian and then Isadora, and basically she goes up to his scary haunted mansion, which is set like out in the cliffs, because it's set in like a coastal town, and you know, you've got like dingy bars that you can go into and things like that, and there's loads of rumours that are being spread about Lucian, what happened to his wife, his kids, and what he's like as well. Everyone's scared of him. Nobody really sees him that much. He's a bit of a recluse up there, and he has an insane force misfortune, and she ends up going to work for him because she's to look after his mother, who is ill or unwell. And there are some crazy twists in this book at the end that you don't see coming. It's very creepy, like literally like the mum has a doll collection. Like it's that kind of dark gothic romance, and it's kind of like a suspenseful read. It's giving like psychological thriller-ish meets dark romance with spice and then a bit of a gothic element to it as well. I just had so much fun with it. I just wished that it carried on the way it started. That being said, I still gave it 4 stars. The spice was good, the storyline was good. It was a very unique story. Like, I haven't read anything else on my shelf that's like this, and I don't really know if I have anything else that's like this. And it's my first book by Kerry Lake, and I do think she writes. I like her writing style, really got on with it. And yeah, highly recommend it if you guys are into dark romance. And also I would say, if you're newer to dark romance, you probably could read this, because it starts to introduce you to other things that you might find, say, in the Lord series by Chantal Tessier, secret societies, like dark academia, that kind of thing. That is not for beginners, but I would recommend this if you've read a couple of dark romances and you want to step it up a notch. Oh, so there we have it, guys. They're the 15 books that I read in February and March. If you've read any of them and you liked them, let me know in the comments down below. I am very excited for my April reads. My TBR jar picked out some insane reads, very much leaning towards dark romance. Thank you so much for watching this video, guys, and I'll see you in my next one.